What's up, guys? Dave Lipson here. And today we're going to talk about taking it to the next level with targeted nutrient timing. A lot of people might not necessarily understand what I'm talking about when I use that phrase, targeted nutrient timing. And it's something that I've grown increasingly reliant on with myself and with my athletes to be able to reduce body fat and still see an increase in size and strength and muscularity through the whole process. Really, targeted nutrient timing, when done well, is all about balancing the anabolic and the catabolic signals in your body to maximize muscle growth and be able to recomposition at the same time. That's what everybody wants: more muscle, less body fat, more strength, more power, better definition, and all this stuff that honestly looks awesome at the beach and allows you to move big weights. So when it comes to those two elements, anabolism and catabolism, I think it's important to actually understand what goes into each one of them, like what's associated with them, what are the signals we're looking for, what are the adaptations we get out of it, what are the upsides, what are the downsides, and how do they blend and mesh together, and how can you customize them and leverage targeted nutrient timing to meet your goals with where you're at right now. So first off, anabolism, or being anabolic, refers to a state of building up your body, uptaking nutrients, synthesizing protein into muscle, and being able to turn food or fuel into muscle mass. And some stuff that's associated with anabolism is one, being fully fed and fully recovered, getting good, deep, restful sleep, making sure that your hormones are not overstressed, making sure that there's good cellular energy status. And what I'm talking about specifically is plenty of stores of muscle glycogen in your muscles, in your liver, and also sometimes in where we store them in fat tissue. But we want to make sure that a fully fed muscle is going to be one going into these workouts to make sure that it doesn't have to source energy elsewhere or essentially end up consuming itself, but it has the ability to actually uptake and plenty of fuel to be in a surplus when you're training. Kind of filling the tank all the way to the top can be a good way of thinking about that. Now, some hormones that are associated with anabolism are things like testosterone, growth hormone, but also things like insulin and growth factors in the body. Insulin's a really important, very valuable hormone when it comes to muscle gain. And I think a lot of us know it in terms of metabolic disease, whether you're talking about diabetes or hyperinsulinemia or even obesity and diseases of the Western culture, because the way insulin works is it serves as a regulatory hormone to remove excess blood sugar from your bloodstream when it gets too high. And typically, it's going to get high by consuming large meals with lots of carbohydrates, because carbohydrates break down into sugars, which raises your bloodstream, so your blood sugar. And so your pancreas releases insulin to take that excess blood sugar and store it and actually drive it into cells, to push nutrients into cells and store as fuel for later, primarily as glycogen in your liver, muscle, and adipose tissue. So taking advantage of that in this training window, right? So if you imagine, like, okay, maybe 3 hours before your training, 3 hours after your training is what we would consider to be the anabolic window, where all the food you're going to eat, in that previous 3 hour window is going to be used a lot for the actual effort of training. And then after, right, when your metabolism is running really high and you're actually still burning a lot of energy because of intense and heavy weightlifting, there's plenty of fuel in there to continue to support the fuel and nutrient uptake. That really gives you the best opportunity to grow, capturing that anabolic window. And that's where carbohydrates can be so valuable. Being able to place carbohydrates before, during, and after the workout strategically, and making sure that you are getting enough in your system to help facilitate this process is really important. But another thing that's important is what we're driving into the muscle cells. So I like to tell athletes, along with anabolism comes this concept of positive nitrogen balance. And positive nitrogen balance just simply means you're eating more than enough protein to support your lean muscle mass currently, and even a surplus of it to help you heal, remodel, repair, and grow tissue. So you gotta get enough protein. And I know we had a great article above here talking about how much protein you need and those different calculations. But when it comes to anabolism, absolutely, you need that positive nitrogen balance combined with strategic insulin spikes to drive that stuff into cells around training is just a formula for success. Now, let's talk about Maybe not the times when we are eating, but maybe the times when we're not eating quite as much and what that should look like. And I'll tell athletes some pretty simple rules. If you're someone who's trying to improve your composition and put on muscle, it makes sense that probably about 75% of your daily carbohydrate intake should take place in that anabolic window before, during, and after training. So, for instance, if you are eating 200 grams of carbs a day, which a lot of men do when they're cutting, that's a very typical prescription we might give some guys. 150 of those carbs should come around the training, 50 grams before, maybe 50 grams even during, with intra workout carbohydrates using things like Carbolin, which contains slow and fast digesting carbs for your workout, and then an additional 50 grams maybe after, or it could be one meal before the training and two meals after. But just making sure that the majority of that food is in that window when you're going to be able to take advantage of that increased metabolism, that body's increased core temperature, that increased caloric expenditure. That's going to put the carbohydrates to use, because that's the purpose of carbs. The purpose of carbs is to fuel your training and facilitate anabolism. Other than that, you really don't need them. Honestly, it's actually going to be much more advantageous in terms of health, in terms of fat loss, and in terms of overall wellness if you are really thinking about restricting carbohydrates outside of that window throughout the day, where maybe only those remaining 25% or 50 grams of carbs in the scenario I gave you there is allocated with a morning meal with maybe high protein and very low carb, and a nighttime snack with high protein and low carb again. And that is a nice way to engineer your day if you can, being able to kind of keep the carbs low in the first half of the day, and then feed a lot around your training, and then finish off not with a ton of carbs before you go to sleep, but maybe with just a higher protein or higher fat meal to give you satiety and just put the food in your system. That's going to help you again achieve a positive nitrogen balance. Now, to the contrast of anabolism, we've got catabolism. And catabolism refers to a state of breaking down the body. Things associated with catabolism is loss of overall mass, shrinking of fat cells, better insulin sensitivity is also associated with it, high levels of stress and activity. And while we don't want to be catabolic all the time, because catabolism can also be associated with things like overtraining, right? Overstressed, under-recovered. We want to kind of strategically maybe leverage it to be able to reduce the size of fat cells when we're not in that training window, right? Where we're trying to stay lean and not necessarily stimulate insulin and store energy, but really just kind of keep it tight and see if we can find a way into that adipose tissue to be able to use some of those stores. So an important hormone to understand is called glucagon, and glucagon is a mobilization regulatory hormone, very similar to insulin, but with an opposite function. So where insulin kicks in when blood sugar gets too high, when you're in a fasted state, when you haven't eaten in a while, when your blood sugar gets a little bit low, or just in the absence of a lot of carbohydrates, your blood sugar tends to drop. And when it gets too low, glucagon is released from your pancreas, and it serves to take glycogen, to take those stored energy stores and convert it back into glucose to raise your bloodstream. And that's how you shrink fat cells. That's how you get lean. And so being able to spend a portion of the day with some type of level of either fasting or carbohydrate restriction can be really, really valuable. And this pairs totally well and really effectively with things like fasted cardio, light activity, not too intense, because we don't want to eat into the muscle. We don't want to use too much muscle glycogen, but just, burn the calories and get into the adipose tissue. This would be like a zone 2, 120, 130 beats a minute. You can do it with just walking. You can do it with some very light weightlifting workout, or what I call depletion. That's like lightweight, high rep, very short rest, kind of cardio weightlifting, but nice and easy. That's another great way. Calisthenics, right? Just body weight movement, or a combination of all of them. Maybe you hit the bike for 3 minutes, you do 50 air squats, you hit the ski erg for 3 minutes, you hit 30 push-ups, and you do that for a few rounds, but at a conversational pace, at a pace that you could talk to somebody. This combination is amazing for fat loss because it allows you to get into those fat stores, because your blood sugar isn't very high, because your energy status isn't really high. It's going to look for stores. And so doing this light activity, especially when combining it with things like branched chain amino acids or essential amino acids, which help facilitate and stimulate glucagon, or even, and here's the kicker, doing something like a protein shake, because protein and amino acids help stimulate glucagon. But the protein has a really cool effect in that it also acts as a thermogenic, meaning it increases your body's core temperature. So when you think about protein, right, your body has to work pretty hard to process protein. Your liver, your digestion needs to do a lot of work to derive the energy from that macronutrient. And that extra work increases your metabolism, increases your body's core temperature, but also helps us achieve, going back to anabolism, a positive nitrogen balance. So there you have it, guys. Protein throughout the day at steady doses, carbohydrate restriction, and hammering it in that training window. Now, you can do this in a caloric deficit. You can do this in a caloric surplus. The idea is that the majority of the food, the fuel, and especially the carbohydrates come in that really advantageous window. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, check out the full write-up of this subject because it is pretty cool. I'd like to break it down and even show you guys a sample schedule of what this looks like in our Thunderbow blog. And let us know how you enjoy this stuff. If you want to learn more, check out our 30-day shred challenge, where we actually help engineer a personalized schedule for each athlete with the targeted nutrient timing. Because not everybody trains in the afternoon, not everybody trains in the morning, not everybody has a regular schedule. Some people work at night. So sometimes this requires just a little bit of information to help make those decisions, but still relying on those main principles. I'll ask athletes what time they wake up, what time they go to bed, what time they typically train, and how their energy is throughout the day. And that can all help dictate where we should place the workout, where we should place the food, where we might even place cardio. So check that out at the 30-day shred, one of the cool systems that we like to use. And I think, honestly, with all the before and afters behind me, this is how we achieve this. It's that targeted nutrient timing system and being able to grow muscle and reduce body fat. DEXA scans that look like this with muscle mass going up and body fat going down. And it's a popular myth that you can't do it. Doctors will say, no, you're either losing body fat or gaining muscle, but you can't do both. I have the DEXA scans to prove it from dozens of athletes. Okay, you can definitely do it. It just takes a little bit of strategy and some good thinking and a proper technique to be able to knock this out of the park. And fundamentally, that's what makes what we do different to most weight loss systems. It's not just about weight loss. I think about it as like it's muscle building, right? It's body building, not body shrinking. So it doesn't make sense that we should ever be losing muscle if our goal is to enhance muscularity. If muscle is the currency of longevity, we always want to, try to be headed in an upward direction, sometimes faster or slower, but, over long periods of time, incrementally, just bumping up more and more and building the physicality. And I tell athletes, build that muscle as early as you can, as high as you can, because there is a point when it becomes more of a maintenance of trying to hold on to it. So you want to use that almost as a hedge to be able to hold on to good muscularity, build it up, and have it as high as you can throughout your life. All right. Thank you, guys.